In the UK, our neighbours often live too close to home. So it's no surprise 1 in 5 of us have been in an argument with next door.
Oi!
Coming up, neighbours fall out in rural Devon.
We knew what he'd done. Boom!
A rift between friends gets nasty in Nottingham.
I was shaking. I was absolutely terrified.
And nightmare neighbours get extreme in Wales.
They were investigating a bomb.
When people say they want to escape to the country, Bow in Devon is the type of village they usually imagine. 7 years ago, following a divorce, Robert Crowley came here looking for a fresh start.
I think you get a feel about somewhere when you go into a property and you feel at home, or you don't feel at home. And I felt this was, you know, a probably good place to live.
Well, he wanted us to help him put his shed up out the back and all that, you know, and I'd give him lots of bits of material and stuff. You know, I thought he was all right. And sometimes if I bought a bag of turnips, I'd give him a turnip. Never used to charge him.
And he noticed my flying pigs on the wall as well. So the next thing he's produced these flying geese. And here you are, you know, I've got these for you. I thought, well, I don't really want them. But because they were a gift, you know, I thought it was only polite to accept them gracefully and whatever.
We were very good friends in the beginning. You know, he used to come in here and have cups of tea and sandwiches. I used to go in his place and have sandwiches and cups of tea.
They would make me a cup of tea and once or twice a slice of saffron cake with a piece of cheese. Never had that before. It must be a local delicacy or something.
Robert was welcomed into the close-knit community by Keith Kellaway and his son Matthew, and was even happy to lend them the tools of his trade as an electrician. But when it came to his best tools, he had to draw the line.
I refused to lend them my big Jason machine. I've lent expensive tools out in the past, and they've been returned, burnt out, so I'm not going to take the risk of that. There was a definite change of mood with the Kellaways after I refused to loan him this expensive drill. I was sitting here enjoying an evening's TV when I heard some slapping on that window. So I got up, opened the curtains. I could see the profile of 3 people. They were laughing and really enjoying themselves. But I was fairly spooked out by it. I thought, if you can't sit in your own lounge and enjoy a night's TV, you know, this is not neighbourly. I telephoned the police for the first time.
Robert believed that one of the 3 men he saw was Matthew Kellaway. The police investigated, but Matthew denied any involvement. Not long after, Robert's nighttime peace was disturbed yet again.
Boom! This window came through, the curtains were shut, but it opened the curtains with the ferocity of the force of it, and shattered laminate glass all over the place. A few seconds I got to gather my senses. I picked up this poker and went outside with it for my own protection, or I didn't know whether anybody was going to be hanging around outside, but the street was clear.
Robert had his suspicions as to who was responsible, but there was no proof or witnesses. Keith and Matthew Kellaway have said they know nothing about the incident.
When the police came out, I was repairing the front window with these bits of board, wooden boarding and whatever. I could hear people saying, well, we don't really want to get involved. So I thought, oh, I'm definitely in this on my own.
Robert was feeling increasingly isolated, so the last thing he was expecting to come through the door was a Valentine's card.
So it could have been anybody.
Coming up, a woman from Nottingham gets the fright of her life,
All of a sudden I heard this horrific bang.
and neighbourly relations in Wales go up in smoke.
We were getting scared now. We did not know what was going on.
In Nottinghamshire, Sally and John Johnson live in the peaceful town of Hucknall with their 2 adult sons, Jack and Guy.
We knew we could be happy here, happy family home, hey darling?
Yeah.
And it was, and that's what we made it.
For 14 years, they lived side by side in harmony, with their next-door neighbour.
We got on very well.
Yeah, he used to make fun of the boys, didn't he? If the boys were laughing out in the garden, he'd pop over the fence and the boys loved it as well. They got friendly with him. And if I was cooking, he'd say, "Oh, Sally, that smells lovely. What are you having for tea tonight?" And he was a nice chap.
But in 2009, neighbourly relations would change when their neighbour noticed a problem with their shared chimney.
Our next door neighbour had noticed some damp patches on his wall, so he'd asked me to come round and have a look, which I did. And I said, "I'm going to get some builders in to check our side of the chimney anyway, so I'll get them to check the whole lot and see if it needed pointing."
Oh, goodness me. What should have been just a normal pointing job turned into a bit of a catastrophe, really, didn't it? The chimneys were in a dreadful state of repair, so much so that they'd started to collapse in on each other. And it was a job that needed doing. We couldn't have delayed it.
For their neighbour, the urgent nature of the building work posed a problem.
Each house is responsible, obviously, for their own side. But we knew at the time that he wouldn't be able to pay. He was out of work due to an injury he had. And we stepped in, thinking we were being good neighbours.
The Johnsons offered to pay their neighbours £872.50 share of the costs.
He then said, "Well, when I get my compensation for my injury, I will pay my half back." And I can remember it so clearly because the builder was here as well.
Yeah.
And he turned round and said, "What lovely neighbours."
With the builder as a witness, the Johnsons paid to have the work done. It was completed to everyone's satisfaction, and 2 years passed by with no mention of the money. Then one day, the Johnsons spotted some surprising activity next door.
One morning in June, we noticed that a massive skip had arrived right outside the house. He was there with his friend, ripping down ceilings. He had all new windows fitted. And it suddenly dawned on John and I that perhaps he had received his compensation money. It hurt us to think, why hadn't he come and said something? Because really, that was like waving a red flag to a bull.
With alarm bells ringing, Sally decided to confront the situation.
Sally typed a nice, polite note, put it through his door.
And they were shocked by the response.
I'm not being funny or anything, but it has got nothing to do with you about compensation. Keep your nose out of other people's business.
And then Sally started to suspect that news of them chasing the money had spread to the street.
And I'll never forget one day somebody even spat on the pavement while John and I walked past. I used to hold my head down because I was frightened to look up into people's faces, and yet part of me wanted to turn around and say, "Hey, we're not the naughty people here, we're telling the truth."
The 14-year-old friendship was in tatters, and determined to prove they were in the right, the Johnsons decided to take things one step further.
The only course of action we could take now was to take legal advice, take him to court and sue him to get our money back. We were determined, weren't we, darling?
Yeah. We trusted him and he let us down.
Convinced they'd have a battle on their hands to make their neighbour pay up, the court proceedings began. But then they received an unexpected visitor.
His friend came to the door and he said, "About the money, Sally?" And I went, "Yes." He said he can only afford to pay £800 and that's in instalments. And I no, it's not £800, it's £942.50p with the court costs. We're not interested in the court costs. I says, well, I am, I'm sorry. I thought, you cheeky monkey. And I just went in.
Sally's risky move of rejecting the offer still left her out of pocket. Soon, though, their neighbour's friend returned.
And he said, how much is the whole amount? And he wrote on the cheque the whole amount and handed it over. He said, and by the way, he doesn't want to ever talk to you again, doesn't want anything ever to do with you again. And we said, that's fine, lovely, thank you. And I thought, God, that's the end, thank goodness.
But Sally was speaking too soon, because a few weeks later, events took a dramatic turn.
All of a sudden, I heard this horrific bang. He punched a hole in the fence and was sticking his head through the hole in the fence, ranting and raving, spitting at me, shouting at me. I said, what are you doing? He said, I'm having a bad day, Sally, I'm having a bad day. I was shaking, I was absolutely terrified. It was just like out of The Shining.
When Sally showed me the fence, I said, this is ridiculous, I'm going to phone the police. One officer came on his own. The officer decided that perhaps if he's drunk, you better leave him in his own property, but you could hear him throwing stuff against the wall, banging doors against the wall, let him sober up, and they were going to come back and see him the following morning.
But as far as they know, the police didn't come back. Their neighbour was asked for his version of events, but he decided not to comment. The rift between the neighbours deepened, and for the Johnsons, it seemed there was no end in sight.
He realised that, oh, I've got away with this. I'm going to step my game up, and what else can I get away with?
In 2011, Mike Knox and his partner Yasmin moved to a new house on Lenton Pool in the picturesque town of Denbigh in North Wales.
We lived in Denbigh for a while and we wanted to stay here. I mean, Denbigh is a lovely place and it's multicultural and it's a good mix of people between Filipinos and also English, Welsh. We all get on great, and I just thought, well, this is the place where we're going to stay, and this is the place we're going to bring and rear up our kids.
Like many small towns, the local pub is the focal point of this close-knit community, and landlord Chris Williams is proud of the neighbourhood.
Thank you very much. Nice market town, quite popular with, we get quite a few tourists coming through, and everybody's quite friendly, quite a few eateries in the area, and multitude of pubs.
Shortly after moving in, Mike and his partner's first daughter, Georgia Leah, was born. Mike and his family lived happily in their new home for 2 years, until one night in January 2013, everything changed.
I was watching the television, and my partner was upstairs. She was pregnant, asleep in bed. That's when I heard biggest loud bang I have ever heard in my life. It was massive. So I looked out, and just to see, and there was nothing. There was no sign of any chaos, no problems at all. Everything was just normal, as if nothing had happened.
A couple of days later, Mike asked his next-door neighbour John, leader of the neighbourhood watch group, if he'd heard the same bang.
He just looked at me, as if to say, oh no, I haven't heard anything, I just thought, okay.
Mike dismissed the incident and carried on with family life. But just 1 month later, he was in for another nasty shock.
Yasmin had already gone to bed. It was roughly around 12:30. So I got the bottles ready for my daughter. And then when I went into bed, I saw like this almighty, like white light, and the noise that came from it was horrendous. Felt like it blinded me just for at least 1 or 2 seconds. Then I walked out into the street, and that's when I seen everyone, every single person in the street came straight out. I mean, every single person that lives here at 1 o'clock in the morning was standing outside in the street, and that's when I was wondering, what the hell is going on?
But this time, Mike wasn't the only person who heard the bang. His neighbour Colin was also shaken by the explosion.
The shockwave from it rattled the windows, and it was tremendously loud. It was like a military device.
Soon the neighbourhood was swamped with police, trying to find out who the culprit was. But just a few nights later, Mike and his neighbours were in for yet another sharp shock.
Came out of the house and I saw that there was a series of rings placed on the bonnets of the cars. I thought they were actually candles being placed on the car at first. And then as it got a little bit closer, it looked like charcoal.
With the town councillor and ex-town mayor as his next-door neighbour, Mike turned to John Larson for advice.
And I asked him, what do you think is going on? I mean, who do you think is doing this? And that's when he said, it could be a radical racist group, and they're situated somewhere in Wales, and there could be one or two other groups involved. And that's when I was listening to him wondering, why would anybody want to attack racially me or anybody else in a small town like Denby?
It's quite a little sun trap. Father and son and their partners and the kids came by and stopped, and the father sort of put his foot on this chain link that I used to have here and said, all this trouble's going to carry on until you move from here. And all the time his temper's swelling, and you could see sort of the veins building up in his neck and his eyes bulging, and he's leaning back and forward as if, stop me from killing him. Go on, stop me.
Keith Kellaway has denied all knowledge of this event, but Robert Crowley claims he felt under threat and decided to install surveillance equipment. For his part, Keith claims that Robert was far from being the innocent party.
This is a letter we had around the village, all about the Kellaway family. A lot of it's not true.
The letter claimed to be from a fake charity called Kellaway Aid.
I haven't sent any letters, and I would certainly swear on any oath that I don't send poison pen letters to anybody.
Despite the denial, Keith believes he has proof that Robert sent the letter.
Well, we got this Christmas card. This was when us was friends. Well, this is about 3 or 4 years old, this Christmas card. But obviously he didn't realise we kept the Christmas card that he's writing in.
Although he hasn't had the handwriting professionally analysed, Keith is convinced the two samples match.
He's not an innocent man, is he? Because we got bits and pieces that puts him in the picture.
Coming up,
It was like as if you were in a war zone.
neighbours in Wales are shocked to uncover the truth.
Totally blew my mind completely.
The Johnsons are involved in a violent incident,
How dare you do that to my boys?
and Robert Crowley and Keith Kellaway turn up the heat. The once peaceful town of Denby in North Wales had been rocked by a series of unexplained explosions. Home to Mike Knox and his young family, their street in Lenton Pool appeared to be the target, and no one knew who was responsible.
At the time I was scared. I was scared more for the kids. So it kind of made me become a bit more vigilant in looking after them.
Mike's next-door neighbour, John Larson, had suggested it was a racist terror group, so Mike assumed the threat was coming from outsiders.
I started to look to see if there was any suspicious activity taking place, something going on that I don't know. Anybody there that I don't know. Any cars parked that I don't know of. Locking the back door, locking all your doors and everything else, so you're taking all those precautionary measures, to keep yourself safe, because you don't know what's going to happen next.
In April 2013, 3 months after the first incident, Mike and the other neighbours were shaken by yet another terrifying explosion. Amazingly, no one had been hurt, and there was no debris to be seen, but someone had spotted something.
When I came out into the street, again people were out, and there's a woman that came and ran out, and she said, I just saw someone run all the way up there. I've just seen someone. I thought, well, at least someone's been spotted, at least someone looks like he's responsible for what was going on. I was at that time, I was kind of relieved, thinking, I hope the police catch them, because that way it means it's all over. It's been sorted, it's been resolved, and everyone can get on with their lives. But they didn't find anybody. There was no one there. So we're still left in the same situation in limbo, wondering who is it.
With no real leads, the number of incidents was increasing by the day.
It was happening several times a week on occasions. There was bangs. Sometimes we didn't actually get to find out or locate the source.
When you see the police around and the matter is unresolved, it becomes even more worrying, because you don't know what's going to happen next. In some way, you could say it's a sense of foreboding.
For the neighbours, the situation was about to escalate and become life-threatening.
One night there was a really big bang, and that was like the biggest explosion, and it was like as if you were in a war zone.
I could see police, I could see a lot of activity going on. There was police officers standing on each corners, plus there was police officers at the bottom end cornering off the street.
And this time the device contained a lethal ingredient.
Pieces or shards or ball bearings actually flew across and hit straight through the window of the house just across the road over there. And when it went through the window, it hit the headboard of the bed, and it could have easily hit someone, because at that force, that velocity, hitting straight into a headboard, just imagine what damage that can do to you.
I was told by people who'd seen it that the Land Rover rose 2 feet off the ground.
There's no doubt, had somebody been walking past at that time, then we could well have been investigating a murder.
We were getting scared now. We did not know what was going on. This was getting dark. You know, people were starting to get anxious. They wanted answers. They wanted to know where it was going, what was going to happen to them. And people started to move out of the area as well, you know, within a short space of time, because they didn't know what to expect. Their lives are at stake. Who's going to be next?
Mike's neighbour was one of the first on the scene when the inevitable news crews turned up.
Everybody terrified, literally absolutely terrified. You know, we've got sheltered accommodation around here. There's lots of elderly. There's a lot of scared people. You know, you don't know when you're going to wake up, what's going to happen next. And you've also got the fact people can't sleep. You know, they're looking out the window, checking their cars all the time, and it is very scary.
Yeah, he was used to this kind of thing. He's used to interviews, he's used to dealing with professional people, so to speak. So that's his job. That's what he does. Yeah, he seemed to enjoy what he was doing, that much I did see. You know, it looked to me that he liked being in the limelight. He liked to be in front of the camera, giving his version of details as to what was going on.
But neither John or Mike could anticipate the next dramatic turn of events.
And saw this great big lorry, white lorry, like you've never seen, turn up outside the house. And they looked like army officers.
In Devon, once friends Robert Crowley and Keith Kellaway had turned into foes. And with suspicions building on both sides, no one knew what or when the next incident would be.
I was sat here one evening in September, about 6 o'clock after returning from work, having my tea, having something to drink, and I could hear quite a hullabaloo going on.
2 doors down from Robert Crowley's house, where Keith's daughter lived, a shed had caught fire.
Well, we went down our daughter's place. We left about 5 o'clock, and we had a phone call about 15-20 minutes later saying their shed's on fire, because the smoke was pouring in through the back door. It was out of control, the shed was, because there was 2 or 3 ton of coal in there and a ton of wood in there, plus all my mother's contents when her passed away. You know, so there's a lot of things that was destroyed that is not replaceable.
So I came and opened the front door and spoke to the fire officer who was stood at the front door and said, "Oh, have you managed to contain the fire and whatever?" And jokingly offered him my fire extinguisher. He said, "I think we've got it covered now."
He come out with a little fire extinguisher about 18 inches long, talking to the fireman with it in his hand, and he looked at us and laughed. So, you know, we knew what he'd done. He was just letting us know what he'd done, like.
I phoned 101 and, you know, nipped it in the bud. I said, look, there's a serious fire going on in this village at the moment. And I'm sure I've just been accused of being the fire starter. I want to tell you now, make it clear that I've nothing to do with this whatsoever. But later on that evening, a police officer from Oakhampton had come out and asked to view my CCTV. The fire and the origins of the fire and when the first wispy smokes came out from the shed were recorded on the hard drive of my CCTV recorder.
Can we see it?
No, because it wasn't burned off to a disk or whatever. It was only there for 7 days after that, and then the hard drive goes back to the start again.
They come up and they said it's inconclusive. They couldn't say whether it was electric or whether it was started, you know, but like I say, we know, and I think other people know as well.
Wasn't me, Gov. You'll never pin it on me.
In the months following the fire, Robert claims his works van, which was parked outside on the street, was vandalised. He thought he knew why.
I'd been blamed for this fire, or even though my conscience is clear, I certainly didn't do it.
But there was no evidence.
I was really quite frightened. I really tried to live here anonymously without showing any smoke coming out of the chimney or any steam coming out of the central heat and flue, because I really didn't want them to know whether I was here or not.
He's saying he's nervous living there and all this and that, but he's not really. He's sitting in there thinking what else he can do. I think he likes attention of all of it and all the cameras and that. He watches everybody walk up and down there and passing his door and all that. He got nothing else to do, has he? He sits in there watching it. They reckon that he's obsessed by it, and he's obsessed by me. Well, why is he obsessed by me?
In Nottingham, Sally and John Johnson had fallen out with their neighbour over sharing the cost of building work. Their neighbour had eventually repaid them, but according to the Johnsons, he was out for revenge. They discovered slashed tyres, smashed wing mirrors, and dangerous chemicals on their flower beds. But there was no evidence linking those incidents to their neighbour. Meanwhile, inside their house, the Johnsons felt there was no escape.
He took into his head sometimes, I think, to just bang the walls. Gosh, the pictures used to jump, things used to fall off the mantelpiece. It would be quite frightening.
The Johnsons felt that the situation was spiralling out of control.
There was bang, bang, bang on the wall. A lot of name-calling through the walls as well.
Sally was determined to get it down on tape.
I stood in here thinking, come on then, come on. I will record you now, and people will hear exactly what you do to us.
Come on now, Johnsons. Come on. You think you've been clever?
Oh, it makes me so angry to think that somebody can talk to me like that, shout that, as if I'm scum. It made me so upset. And I thought, but at least someone will believe us that that is what he is saying to us, that we've had to live with that for nearly 2 years.
But she was wrong. She called the police to report what she felt was verbal abuse. A 41-year-old man was interviewed under caution, but wasn't charged. We asked their neighbour to comment, but received no response. By now, Sally had called the police numerous times.
Each time he got away with it, that gave him a little bit more, oh, I'll do something else.
But the Johnsons had no idea that a verbal exchange over the garden fence was about to turn violent. John Johnson and his 2 grown-up sons ended up in a physical fight with their neighbour. Sally was horrified by the aftermath.
Looked like you'd been in a fight.
Yeah.
And I suddenly thought, how dare you do that? How dare you do that to my boys? And I thought I could have lost everything in that couple of minutes. And then I felt very angry because I thought, come on, policeman, do your job. And I think they told me at one point, then they calm down, calm down. I thought, calm down, mate, when I've just seen what's happened to my men.
Both the Johnsons and their neighbour phoned the police. He told them he had been assaulted by two men while he was in his garden and was himself taken to hospital. The police decided there was insufficient evidence to prosecute either party. And when we asked their neighbour about the incident, he said nothing.
It was awful to live knowing that somebody feels that way about you and is prepared to go to those lengths to hurt you.
By now, the police had received 12 official reports of antisocial behaviour from the Johnsons. Sally claims to have called them 79 times, but the next call would prove to be different. One night, 2.5 years after the Johnsons had first lent their neighbour over £800 for chimney repairs, they got a phone call from another man.
He says to me, "It's in your car?" I said, "Why, what?" I looked, and I could see deep scratches going down the side of it. And I thought, oh no, not again.
Because the man had actually witnessed the neighbour damage the Johnsons' car, the police arrested and charged him.
We finally went to court, and although he still denied that he hadn't caused the damage to the car, he was found guilty. And I can remember sitting there. Well, I cried, didn't I, John? I don't mind admitting that, I cried.
Cried with joy.
I cried with joy.
Their neighbour was found guilty of criminal damage and given a 2-year conditional discharge. Soon after his conviction, he moved away, and after 2 years of living a nightmare, John and Sally felt they could finally live in peace. Coming up, Robert Crowley and the Kelloways have a close encounter.
I heard this shout, "Oi!" I retreated quite hastily.
He turned and run.
And the true neighbour from hell.
I was expecting somebody else, some kind of group. He's just my neighbour.
The quiet town of Denbigh in North Wales had been rocked by a series of terrifying explosions that had shaken the community to its very core. Local resident Mike Knox was fearful for the safety of his family.
At the time, I was scared. I was scared more for the kids, thinking, you know, would it happen to them, you know? Emotionally, you started to feel apprehensive, to expect the worst to happen. You knew something was going to come out of this that wasn't good. The neighbours in the street were living in fear themselves. They didn't know what to do. And they're not decent people.
Whoever was doing it was so fast, it was like like it was just beamed down from space, you know. There was explosion and nothing, just a cloud of smoke.
Pillar of the community John Larson helped to hold things together by keeping the press at bay.
There's a lot of scared people. You know, you don't know when you're going to wake up, what's going to happen next.
The next morning, Mike Knox, John's next-door neighbour, noticed a commotion outside.
I was just with the kids, and that's when I saw the activity outside. There was a lot of police. I saw a great big wagon outside, and stepping out of this wagon, there was these military officers with the actual bomb disposal unit. That's when the police officers knocked on the door, and they told me, "So your house is going to be evacuated." And then I said, "Oh, does that mean also John's going to be evacuated as well?" That's when they said no.
One of my customers said that I bet you any money that it's John Larson that's doing all this bombings. And I said, no, he's a pillar of society. He's the ex-mayor, he's a councillor, he's on the county council as well. I said, it can't be anything to do with it.
In a dramatic turnaround of events, the police had received a tip-off and searched John Larson's property. They were shocked by what they discovered.
There were bags of chemicals. There were improvised devices, fireworks that had been tampered with. There were other bits of fuse wire, flash flares. There was a large quantity of that in all parts of the house.
Based on what they found, John Larson was arrested.
And to even suggest or think that John could have anything in his house remotely connected to any kind of lethal substance was just beyond me. It was just totally blew my mind completely.
The news quickly spread to the other neighbours.
But, you know, because I knew him, it was difficult, you know, it was... and I think then, when that was announced, people wanted the legal process to take its course.
Mike testified against his neighbour in court. John Larson was found guilty of 3 counts of arson and causing explosions with intent to endanger life. He was sent to prison for 18 years.
When it came to light that it was him, I was so shocked, and because of all the publicity he had and the way he spoke, that he was so frightened for himself, his wife, his child. And, you know, how he used to speak in council meetings all about it, that it's something that should be done because it's getting so dangerous. And it ended up it was him after all that.
He seemed like a decent person, and he's got a kid of his own. He looks very, you know, responsible person as well. So I was really shocked when I heard it. Couldn't believe it.
I was expecting somebody else, some kind of group, but not John Larson. He's just my neighbour.
Robert Crowley's move to the country had turned into a running battle with his neighbours, Matthew and Keith Kellaway. Both sides suspected the other of having a vendetta against them. Then one night, it all came to a head.
I noticed some ladders had gone missing. I decided to have a ride up into this compound the Kellaways have, and I might just happen upon these ladders.
Unknown to Robert Crowley, the Kellaways were still on site at their compound a few miles away.
He rode up and down past the property 4 or 5 times. So I said to Carol, I said, is that Robert Crowley?
When I got there, the gate was open, so I shone my torch through the gate.
I heard the gate squeak, because he squeaks, the farm gate squeaks. And I said, he's coming up the drive. So I grabbed the pitchfork, and I just grabbed it and I shouted at him.
And then I heard this shout, "Oi, what are you on?" I retreated quite hastily.
He turned and run. We come back the shortcut and parked in the driveway to stop him getting his bike in.
So when I got back to my house, the Kellaways, father and son, had already returned.
And I asked him, what are you doing out on the property? And he kept going, putting his hands up in the air, saying, what evidence have you got? Well, I didn't need evidence. I've seen him now. I chased him, you know?
Then I said, look, go away, but I said in much stronger terms than that. And I closed the door on them. So I put my weight against the door, pulled the handle up, and then turned the lock. And then I could see through this glass. Keith took a punch with his left hand at the door, and then Matthew, I could see his foot up, he was kicking with his steel toe cap boots 4 or 5 times, and eventually that panel came in.
But he was stood about 8, 9 foot back, so he runned at the door and shouldered it, and that's what, he caught Matthew's knee a bit. I did go like that with my hand, but that must have been the reaction, you know. He's 18 stone, isn't he? He runned at that door and shouldered it.
Dialed 999 and police were out in about 10 minutes.
The police arrested Matthew and Keith Kellaway for causing criminal damage. And in April 2014, their case appeared in a magistrate's court.
Well, they found me not guilty. And my son, they found him guilty of kicking the door. And they said that, you know, he kicked it fairly hard, so he probably broke it. And like I said, he got to pay, I think, £700 towards the cost of another door. He's laughing at that because he knows he broke the door. He knows that. But like I say, it's one of those things, isn't it?
Matthew Kellaway was convicted, but that wasn't quite the end of the saga.
I thought after it went to magistrate's court, if there was a lesson to be learned, that they may have learned it and backed off. But no.
When I come down from the garden, I'll go like that. I know he's watching me, you know? Then I give him the, sometimes, victory.
My immediate family said, you know, why don't you move? And I say, well, why should I? You know, I've spent 2 or 3 years titivating the place. Why should I let bullies drive me away?
We're never going to be friends with him, never, ever, no more. We know too much. My mate, he said 200 years ago, Crowleys was witches. It's true. He went to college and he said, so maybe there's a bit of witch coming out in him.